My name is Barnaby. I'm 32, and I never thought my downtown penthouse would tear my family apart. For years, I was the responsible son, the one who worked 80-hour weeks to climb the real estate ladder, while my younger brother Carlos coasted through life. Then came his wedding day. What should have been a celebration turned into my worst nightmare when my parents cornered me, demanding I sign over my home to the newlyweds. When I refused, my father slapped me hard across the face in front of 200 stunned guests. I simply smiled and whispered 6 words that changed everything. "You just lost me forever, Dad." If you've ever had to stand up to family who crossed the line, drop a comment below about where you're watching from, and subscribe to hear how I finally broke free. I grew up in Naperville, a middle-class suburb about 30 miles west of Chicago. Our neighborhood was nice enough, with decent schools and safe streets. My parents, Robert and Patricia, worked hard to provide for us. Dad as an accountant, and Mom as a high school English teacher. But from my earliest memories, the family dynamic was crystal clear. Carlos was the golden child, and I was the reliable afterthought. Carlos was 3 years younger than me, but he commanded the spotlight from the moment he was born. He had this natural charisma, this ability to make people laugh and feel good. I can't count how many times I heard phrases like, "Why can't you be more like your brother?" Or, "Look how Carlos lights up a room." It wasn't that my parents were cruel to me. They just made it abundantly clear who the favorite was. School came easily to me. I was methodical, focused, and driven. By high school, I was taking advanced classes and planning for college, while Carlos struggled to maintain passing grades. But his academic shortcomings were always excused. "He's just not book smart," Mom would say. "He has street smarts. He'll go far in life with his people skills." When college applications came around, I applied for every scholarship possible. I worked weekends at the local hardware store and summers doing landscaping. After all that effort, I managed to secure a partial scholarship to Northwestern University. My parents contributed what they could, but I still graduated with student loans to pay off. Carlos, meanwhile, bounced between 3 different colleges in 5 years, never completing a degree, with my parents footing the entire bill. "College isn't for everyone," Dad would say whenever Carlos decided to drop out and try something new. "He's an entrepreneur at heart." After graduation, I landed an entry-level position at a real estate firm in Chicago. I started at absolute rock bottom as an assistant, making coffee runs and organizing paperwork. The hours were brutal, often stretching from 7 in the morning until 9 at night. I lived in a tiny studio apartment with a roommate, counting every penny while I learned the business. Carlos, meanwhile, launched his first business venture selling custom t-shirts online. My parents gave him $10,000 in startup money. The business folded within 6 months, but somehow this failure was reframed as a valuable learning experience. Next came his food truck idea, then a mobile app concept, then a plan to import artisanal crafts from South America. Each new venture came with a fresh round of financial support from my parents, and each inevitably collapsed. Through those years, I kept my head down and worked. I earned my real estate license, then my broker's license. I started taking on my own clients, building a reputation for honesty and thoroughness. I saved aggressively, lived modestly, and slowly worked my way up. After 7 years of 80-hour weeks, I finally had enough for a down payment on my dream. A penthouse in a downtown high-rise, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of Lake Michigan. The day I closed on that property was the proudest moment of my life. I had earned every square foot through sweat and sacrifice. My girlfriend Rebecca was the first person I called with the news. My parents were the second. Their response? "That's nice, honey. By the way, Carlos needs a place to stay for a few months. His roommate kicked him out." And so, the pattern continued. Carlos would make a mess, and my parents would expect me to help clean it up. When he totaled his car driving drunk, they asked if he could borrow mine for just a few weeks. When he lost his job at the bar for showing up late, they wondered if I might have connections to help him find work. When he racked up gambling debts in Vegas, they called to see if I could loan them money to help him out. I wasn't completely spineless. I said no sometimes, especially when the requests became too outrageous. But there was always that childhood programming, that deep-seated need to please the parents who had always found me lacking compared to their precious Carlos. So I'd give in, time after time, telling myself it was temporary, that someday Carlos would get his act together. Then Carlos met Sophia. She was gorgeous, ambitious, and came from money. Suddenly, my brother was talking about settling down, about responsibility, and future plans. For the first time in his life, he seemed genuinely motivated to change. I was cautiously optimistic. Maybe this relationship would be the making of him. When the engagement announcement came 6 months later, I felt genuinely happy. The wedding was scheduled for the following summer at a beachfront property in Malibu. It seemed rushed to me, but I kept those thoughts to myself. This was Carlos's moment, and despite our complicated history, he was still my brother. I wanted him to succeed, to find happiness, to finally grow up. Little did I know that his path to growing up would involve trying to take everything I had worked for. The engagement party was held at Sophia's parents' country club in Highland Park. Everything about it screamed luxury, from the champagne fountain to the live string quartet. I brought Rebecca, who squeezed my hand supportively throughout the evening as Carlos held court, describing the wedding he and Sophia were planning. "It's going to be epic," he announced to a circle of admirers. "Beachfront ceremony in Malibu, 5-course dinner, open bar with top-shelf liquor only. We're talking 200 guests minimum." I sipped my champagne, mentally calculating the cost of such an event. Carlos was working as a bartender at an upscale restaurant downtown, making decent money in tips, but nothing that would fund a wedding of this magnitude. Sophia worked in marketing, successful but certainly not wealthy enough to afford what they were describing. Later that evening, I overheard my father talking to Sophia's dad about securing the loan and using the house as collateral. A knot formed in my stomach. Were my parents taking out a second mortgage to pay for this wedding? The next day, my mother called to discuss family helping family. "We're so proud of Carlos for finding such a wonderful girl," she said. "We want to give them the wedding of their dreams." "That's great, Mom," I replied cautiously. "But can you afford what they're planning? It sounds extravagant." "Well," she hesitated, "we were hoping you might contribute, sweetheart. You're doing so well now, with your fancy apartment and everything." After some back and forth, I agreed to contribute $10,000 toward the wedding. It was more than I was comfortable with, but I told myself it was a one-time expense. Besides, Rebecca and I had been dating for 2 years, and I was thinking about proposing soon. Maybe this goodwill would be returned when our time came. Rebecca and I spent a weekend shopping for the perfect wedding gift. We finally settled on a handcrafted dining table from an artisan furniture maker. It was expensive, but would last a lifetime, something the couple could build memories around. Rebecca thought it was perfect, symbolic of their new life together. "You're a good brother," she said, as we arranged delivery. "Despite everything, you always come through for your family." The bachelor party in Las Vegas was predictably over the top. Carlos and 8 friends, including me, spent 3 days gambling, clubbing, and drinking. I watched as my brother blew through thousands of dollars at the blackjack tables, ordering bottle service at exclusive nightclubs, and treating everyone to expensive meals. When I asked him if he should be more careful with money right before his wedding, he laughed. "Life's about to change in a big way, bro," he said, clapping me on the shoulder. "Gotta enjoy freedom while I can." On the last night, I overheard Carlos talking to his friend Tyler in the hotel suite. "So, you're really getting an upgrade in your living situation, huh?" Tyler asked. Carlos laughed. "You have no idea, man. Wait till you see the view from 30 floors up." I frowned. Carlos and Sophia had told everyone they were looking at starter homes in the suburbs. What was this about 30 floors up? But I was exhausted from 3 days of pretending to enjoy the excessive partying, so I let it slide. As the wedding date approached, the red flags continued to multiply. At a planning meeting with the wedding coordinator, Sophia's mother casually mentioned how generous I was to help the young couple get established. When I asked what she meant, she quickly changed the subject. At the rehearsal dinner, Sophia's father cornered me at the bar. "I hear you're in real estate," he said. "Must be nice having that penthouse downtown, great location." "Thank you," I replied, uncertain why he was bringing up my home. "It took a long time to afford it." He nodded thoughtfully. "I bet the newlyweds will love living there. Perfect for entertaining." Before I could ask what he meant, Carlos called everyone to attention for toasts. The moment passed, but the unsettled feeling in my stomach grew stronger. That night, my cousin Jamie called me at the hotel. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice low. "I overheard your parents talking with Carlos and Sophia. They were discussing you signing over your penthouse as a wedding gift." "What?" "That's ridiculous," I said. "No one has even mentioned that to me. Besides, who gives their home as a wedding gift? That's absurd." "I just thought you should know," Jamie insisted. "They were talking about it like it was already decided." I thanked her, but dismissed the warning. Even my parents, with their history of favoring Carlos, wouldn't go that far. Would they? The wedding day arrived with perfect weather, 78 degrees, and clear blue skies over Malibu. The ceremony site was breathtaking, with white chairs arranged on a manicured lawn overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Flowers in white and pale blue adorned the aisle and the elegant arch where the couple would exchange vows. I stood at the front as one of Carlos's groomsmen, watching as Sophia walked down the aisle looking radiant in her designer gown. Despite my growing unease about the situation, I felt genuine emotion when they exchanged vows. Carlos seemed sincere, his voice cracking slightly as he promised to love and cherish Sophia forever. I found myself blinking back tears, hoping this truly was a turning point for my brother. The reception began in a luxurious tent on the property, with crystal chandeliers and tables adorned with elaborate floral centerpieces. Rebecca looked stunning in her deep blue dress, and for a while, I allowed myself to relax and enjoy the celebration. We danced, clinked glasses with friends, and indulged in the gourmet meal. Then came the first strange encounter. Sophia's sister Madison approached us at our table, champagne in hand, and slightly tipsy. "So Barnaby," she said with a knowing smile, "when do we all get to see this amazing penthouse everyone's talking about?" Sophia showed me pictures, and I'm totally jealous of that rooftop terrace. Rebecca gave me a confused look. I forced a smile and deflected. "Maybe someday we'll have you all over for dinner. But tonight is about Carlos and Sophia, right?" Madison laughed. "Of course. But seriously, they're so lucky. What a wedding gift." Before I could ask what she meant, She was whisked away by another guest. Rebecca leaned in close to me. What was that about? Why does she think we're having people over to the penthouse? I have no idea, I said, but a sickening feeling was growing in my stomach. Later, I passed by Carlos and his groomsmen near the bar. Carlos was showing something on his phone. That's the living room, he was saying. And check out the view from 30 floors up. You can see the entire lakefront. I stopped in my tracks. He was showing them photos of my penthouse, my home. Carlos's college roommate, Marcus, approached me at the dessert table, looking uncomfortable. Hey man, congrats on your brother's wedding. It's really something. Thanks, Marcus. Good to see you. He shifted his weight, not meeting my eyes. Listen, I just wanted to say, well, family can be complicated, right? Just take care of yourself. What do you mean? I asked. Nothing specific, he backpedaled. Just, look out for yourself. Throughout the reception, I noticed my parents were avoiding me. Whenever I approached them, they would suddenly find someone else they needed to speak with. It was subtle, but unmistakable. When it came time for gift opening, Carlos and Sophia sat in decorated chairs at the front of the tent. They exclaimed over each present, thanking guests effusively. When they opened our dining table gift card with the photo of the custom piece, Carlos looked directly at me. Thanks, bro. Nice table. Still waiting for your real gift, though. The room laughed, but there was an edge to his voice that made my blood run cold. Rebecca squeezed my hand under the table. I finally cornered my parents near the cake table. What's going on? I demanded. Why is everyone talking about my penthouse like it's some kind of gift for Carlos and Sophia? My mother looked alarmed. Barnaby, this isn't the time or place. When is the time? The wedding is almost over. My father stepped between us. We'll discuss family matters after the guests leave. This is your brother's special day. Don't make a scene. Rebecca found me moments later, concern written across her face. Everything okay? You look upset. Something's not right, I told her. I think my family is planning something involving our home. Your penthouse. That's crazy. They can't just decide to give away your property. I know. But I've been hearing weird comments all day. Before we could discuss it further, Carlos's best man Jackson pulled me aside. Listen, Barnaby, he said quietly. I don't know you well, but I've known Carlos since high school. They're planning something, and it's not right. Watch yourself when they get you alone. What are you talking about? Who's planning what? Jackson looked over his shoulder. Your parents, Carlos, and Sophia. They've been talking about your place downtown for weeks, like it's already theirs. A cold feeling settled in my chest. Jamie's warning from the previous night suddenly seemed less far-fetched. As the reception began winding down, I saw my parents huddled with Carlos and Sophia, all four of them glancing in my direction. The storm clouds were gathering, and I knew the confrontation was coming. It happened during the last hour of the reception. I was returning from the restroom when my mother intercepted me in the hallway. Barnaby, we need to talk as a family. Carlos and Sophia are waiting in the bridal suite. Her voice was tight, her smile forced. What's this about, Mom? Just family matters. Come on, your father is waiting too. I followed her down the hallway, texting Rebecca quickly. In bridal suite with family. Something's up. The bridal suite was a spacious room with elegant furnishings. Carlos and Sophia sat on a velvet sofa, still in their wedding attire. My father stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back. When I entered, They all turned to look at me with expressions ranging from expectation to barely concealed hostility. "Congratulations again," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "Beautiful wedding. Thank you, Barnaby," Sophia replied, her voice honey-sweet. "We have something important to discuss with you." My father cleared his throat and stepped forward. "Son, we need you to sign over your penthouse to your brother and his new wife." I actually laughed, thinking it was some bizarre joke. "Very funny, Dad. We're serious," my mother said, pulling papers from her purse. "We've already spoken to a lawyer about the transfer of deed." My laughter died as I realized they were completely serious. "You want me to give away my home? The place I worked for years to afford? As a wedding present?" "We've already promised it to Carlos and Sophia," my mother continued, as if this was a perfectly reasonable request. "They're starting their new life together, and they need a nice place to live." Carlos grinned and held up his phone, swiping through photos. "Look, I already have the pictures from when we viewed it last month while you were out of town. We've been planning how to decorate." I stared in disbelief. "You went into my home without permission?" "Your mother has a spare key," Carlos shrugged. "No big deal." Sophia leaned forward eagerly. "I'm thinking of painting the master bedroom a soft blue, and we'll need to replace that awful kitchen backsplash. Oh, and the guest room will make a perfect nursery once we start having children." The shock was wearing off, replaced by mounting anger. "Let me get this straight. You all conspired behind my back, entered my property without permission, and now you expect me to just sign it over to you? Have you lost your minds?" "Don't be selfish, Barnaby," my father said sternly. "Carlos needs a fresh start. This marriage is his chance to finally settle down and become responsible. A proper home will help with that. And what about my life? Where am I supposed to live?" My mother waved her hand dismissively. "You make good money in real estate. You can buy another place. Carlos needs this more than you do." "Yeah, bro," Carlos added with that familiar entitled smirk. "You don't even need that place with your money. You're always talking about investing in property. Consider this an investment in family." I looked at each of their faces, searching for any sign that they recognized the absurdity of their request. There was none. "This is insane," I said firmly. "The penthouse is mine. I earned it. I paid for it. I'm not giving it to anyone. End of discussion." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? What exactly have you done for me?" I asked, incredulous. "I put myself through college. I built my career without help. I saved for years to afford that penthouse. What have any of you done except take from me?" "We raised you," my father thundered. "We gave you life, a home, an education. You did the bare minimum," I countered, my voice rising, despite my efforts to stay calm. "And you've always favored Carlos. Always. I've spent my life trying to earn your approval, while you handed everything to him on a silver platter." Carlos stood up, his face flushed with anger. "There you go again, playing the victim. You've always been jealous of me. You're just bitter because people actually like me, while you're just the boring, responsible one nobody wants to hang out with. I'm responsible because someone in this family has to be. And what good has all your charm done you, Carlos? Failed businesses, gambling debts, relationship disasters. You're 30 years old, and you've never stood on your own 2 feet." Sophia gasped at my outburst. My father's face turned dark red. "You will apologize to your brother right now," he demanded. "I will not," I replied, my voice steady. "This ends today. I'm done being the family ATM. I'm done bailing Carlos out of his messes. And I am absolutely done letting you all treat me like I matter less than him." The door opened, and Rebecca entered. "Everything okay in here?" she asked, though her expression made it clear she knew it wasn't. "Perfect timing," my father said coldly. "Perhaps you can talk some sense into Barnaby. He's refusing to help his brother start his married life properly." Rebecca moved to stand beside me. "I'm not sure what you mean. They want me to give my penthouse to Carlos and Sophia as a wedding gift," I explained. Her eyes widened. "Your home? The one you worked 80-hour weeks for years to afford?" "The very same." Rebecca's normally gentle expression hardened. "That's completely unreasonable." Carlos stormed across the room and flung open the door. "Mom, Dad, Sophia says it's either the penthouse or nothing. Tell him." He marched out, leaving the door open. Moments later, he returned with several guests in tow, including Sophia's parents. The private family confrontation was now becoming a public spectacle. "What's happening?" Sophia's father asked, looking confused. "Barnaby is refusing to give us our wedding gift," Sophia announced, her voice carrying through the open door to the hallway where more guests were gathering. My father stepped toward me, his face inches from mine. "This is your last chance," he hissed. "Choose that apartment or your family. You can't have both." The room had gone quiet. I could feel dozens of eyes on us, the wedding guests who had been pulled into this drama. "I choose my self-respect," I said quietly. The slap came out of nowhere. My father's open palm connected with my cheek, with a crack that echoed in the silent room. My head jerked to the side from the force of it. Someone gasped. Rebecca cried out. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. 200 guests stood frozen, witnessing my humiliation. I slowly turned back to face my father, feeling a strange calm descend over me. I smiled slightly and leaned in close to him. "You just lost me," I whispered. "Forever." I took Rebecca's hand and walked out of the room, through the crowd of stunned guests, and out into the cool evening air. My cheeks stung, but it was nothing compared to the pain in my heart. In one moment, my father had severed our relationship as decisively as if he'd taken a knife to it. As we walked to the car, I didn't look back once. The drive home from Malibu to my downtown penthouse took over an hour in traffic. Rebecca and I sat in complete silence the entire time, her hand resting on mine. The physical sting of the slap had faded, but the emotional impact was just beginning to set in. My own father had struck me in front of hundreds of people because I wouldn't give away my home. As we pulled into the parking garage of my building, Rebecca finally spoke. "Are you okay?" "I don't know," I answered honestly. "I don't think I've processed what just happened." We rode the elevator to the 30th floor in silence. When the doors opened directly into my penthouse foyer, I felt a wave of gratitude for this space that was mine, that I had earned through years of sacrifice and hard work. The floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the Chicago skyline lit up against the night sky. This was my sanctuary, the physical manifestation of every early morning and late night I'd put into building my career. "They really expected me to just hand this over," I said, my voice hollow with disbelief. Rebecca wrapped her arms around me. "I'm so sorry, Barnaby. What they did was inexcusable." We both jumped as my phone began buzzing repeatedly. I pulled it from my pocket to find dozens of notifications flooding in. Text messages, missed calls, social media alerts. The wedding guests had witnessed the confrontation, and now everyone was reaching out. There were messages from colleagues who had attended the wedding, from distant relatives, from friends of the family. Some expressed shock and sympathy. Others demanded explanations. A few even suggested I should have just given Carlos the penthouse to keep the peace. "You don't need to deal with any of this tonight," Rebecca said, taking the phone from my hand and placing it on the counter. "Let's just get some rest." But sleep was impossible. I lay awake until dawn, replaying the events in my mind, hearing my father's words, feeling the sting of his palm against my face. By morning, I was exhausted but no closer to making sense of what had happened. Over coffee, I finally checked my phone again. Among the messages was a surprising one from Jackson. "Carlos's best man. Need to talk. It's important. Call me." I stepped out onto my terrace and made the call. "Barnaby, man, I'm sorry about yesterday," Jackson said when he answered. "What happened was messed up." "Thanks," I replied, not sure what else to say. "Listen, there's something you should know. Your parents are in deep with Carlos's wedding. They took out a second mortgage on their house to pay for it. They're nearly broke." "What? Why would they do that?" "Carlos convinced them it was an investment in his future with Sophia. But here's the thing, man. Carlos has been telling everyone for months that you promised him your penthouse. He's been showing pictures, talking about moving in after the honeymoon. He even brought some friends by to see it a few weeks ago." My blood ran cold. "He brought people to my home when I wasn't here?" "Yeah. Said he had a key from your mom." "Look, I've known Carlos since high school. He's my friend, but he's always expected everything to be handed to him. This time, he went too far." After hanging up, I sat on my terrace, trying to process this new information. My parents had financially ruined themselves for Carlos's wedding, then expected me to give up my home to complete the package. The level of entitlement was staggering. Rebecca found me still sitting there an hour later. "More messages are coming in," she said, her voice tight with anger. "Carlos is posting on social media that you ruined the wedding with your selfishness." "Of course he is," I said tiredly. "He's never taken responsibility for anything in his life. Why start now?" My phone rang again. It was my mother. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to her message. "Barnaby, how could you humiliate your brother on his wedding day? After all we've done for you. Your father is beside himself. You need to make this right. Call us immediately." This was followed by a message from my father. "You've broken your mother's heart. I expect an apology and a change in your attitude. Family comes first, son. Always." The disconnect from reality was breathtaking. They had ambushed me, demanded my home, and physically assaulted me when I refused. Yet somehow, I was the villain in their story. The doorman called up around noon. "Mr. Henderson, there's a delivery for you." It was a large flower arrangement with a card from my childhood friend Anthony. "Saw what happened at the wedding. Been watching this pattern since we were kids. Call if you need anything. Proud of you for standing up for yourself." Anthony and I had drifted apart over the years, but he had witnessed the family dynamic throughout our childhood. His support meant more than he could know. In the afternoon, I called Martin, my mentor from the real estate firm. I gave him a brief overview of what had happened. "Take some time off," he advised. 2 weeks, minimum. This is a traumatic event, Barnaby, even if it doesn't feel like it yet. The betrayal by family cuts deeper than any other kind. I agreed, arranging for my assistant to handle my clients temporarily. Then, following Martin's recommendation, I made an appointment with a therapist who specialized in family trauma. "You've never talked much about your family," Rebecca said that evening as we ate takeout on the couch. "But I've noticed how tense you get around them, how you always seem to be walking on eggshells, especially with your parents. I guess I thought it was normal." I admitted. The golden child and the scapegoat. Classic family roles. There's nothing normal about what they did yesterday, she said firmly. Nothing. My phone pinged with an email notification. It was from a cousin on my mother's side, forwarding a message my mother had sent to the extended family. In it, she claimed I had promised the penthouse to Carlos months ago, then cruelly changed my mind at the wedding out of jealousy. She painted me as mentally unstable, requesting the family's prayers during this difficult time. They're rewriting history, I said, showing Rebecca the email. Creating a narrative where I'm the bad guy. Are you going to correct them? I thought about it for a long moment. No. I finally decided. Defending myself would just drag me further into their dysfunction. The truth will come out eventually. That decision, to step back rather than engage, was the first step in my healing process. Though I didn't realize it at the time, it was the beginning of setting boundaries that would ultimately save me. The initial shock gave way to a deep, pervasive grief. I found myself moving through the stages typical of mourning, because that's what this was. The death of the family relationship, as I had known it. First came denial. I would wake up some mornings convinced the whole wedding disaster had been a bizarre nightmare. Surely my own parents wouldn't have demanded I give up my home. Surely my father wouldn't have struck me in public. Then came anger, burning hot and consuming. I would pace my penthouse, raging at the injustice, the years of favoritism, the absolute audacity of their expectations. During one particularly dark moment, I gathered every family photo in my home and threw them in a box, unable to look at their faces. Bargaining followed. Maybe if I had handled the confrontation differently. Maybe if I had seen the warning signs earlier. Maybe if I offered financial help instead of a flat refusal. Depression settled in around the 2-week mark. I returned to work, going through the motions while feeling disconnected from everything around me. Rebecca grew concerned as I spent evenings staring silently out at the city lights, lost in thought. Through it all, my therapist guided me toward the final stage. Acceptance. Not acceptance that their behavior was okay, but acceptance that this was the reality of my family dynamic, and had been all along. I just hadn't wanted to see it. During this period, I learned more about the extent of Carlos's financial problems. A private investigator I hired, at my therapist's suggestion, discovered my brother had accumulated over $90,000 in gambling debts. He had maxed out credit cards in his name, then somehow opened cards in my parents' names. Sophia, it seemed, had no idea about the depths of his financial troubles when she agreed to marry him. The investigator also confirmed that my parents had indeed refinanced their home multiple times, most recently to pay for the extravagant wedding. They were underwater on their mortgage and facing potential bankruptcy. 3 weeks after the wedding, I received a certified letter from a lawyer representing my family. It claimed I had verbally promised the penthouse to Carlos and Sophia and demanded I fulfill this commitment immediately. My own attorney responded with a strongly worded cease and desist letter, warning them that any further harassment could result in legal action. Meanwhile, Carlos and Sophia had returned from their honeymoon in Bali, also paid for by my parents, and launched what appeared to be a coordinated social media campaign against me. They posted carefully edited photos from the wedding confrontation, with captions about toxic family members and broken promises. Mutual friends began taking sides, with many accepting Carlos's version of events without question. Rebecca remained my rock throughout. They can say whatever they want, she told me one night, as we looked at yet another inflammatory post. The people who truly know you understand what kind of person you are. To help process my emotions, I joined a support group for adult children of toxic parents. Listening to others' stories helped me recognize patterns I had been blind to my entire life. The constant comparisons to Carlos, the dismissal of my achievements, the expectation that I would always give while he would always take, these weren't isolated incidents, but part of a systemic family dysfunction. 6 weeks after the wedding, my parents showed up unannounced at my office building. The receptionist, already briefed about the situation, called security before even notifying me they were there. "They're demanding to see you," she told me over the phone. "They say it's an emergency." "It's not," I replied, surprising myself with how calm I felt. "Please have security escort them out." Watching from my office window as my parents were firmly but politely removed from the building, I felt a strange sense of power. For the first time in my life, I was establishing and enforcing boundaries with them. That evening, my attorney called to discuss the possibility of a restraining order. "Based on their escalating behavior, we have grounds," she explained. "It would legally prevent them from coming to your home or workplace." I asked for time to consider it. As painful as the situation was, these were still my parents. The thought of taking legal action against them felt extreme. The next day, I received an anonymous email with an audio attachment. The message read simply, "Thought you should hear this." From the rehearsal dinner. I played the recording with trepidation. It was Carlos's voice, slightly slurred from drinking, talking to someone at what sounded like the rehearsal dinner. "Yeah, Barnaby has no idea," he was saying with a laugh. "Mom and Dad promised me his place months ago. They have a key, so we've already measured for furniture. He works so much, he's barely even there. Probably won't even miss it." Another voice, presumably one of his friends, asked, "But how are you going to get him to sign it over? Public pressure?" Carlos replied confidently, "No one says no to the groom on his wedding day, especially with everyone watching. And if he tries, my parents will handle him. They always do." I sat at my desk, listening to the recording 3 times. The premeditation was chilling. This hadn't been a spontaneous request. It had been a calculated plan to manipulate and coerce me in a public setting where they thought I couldn't refuse. I forwarded the recording to my attorney with a brief message, proceeding with the restraining order. Please prepare the paperwork. The final confrontation came 2 months after the wedding. Carlos showed up at my penthouse, unannounced on a Saturday morning. The doorman, under strict instructions, called up before allowing him access. "It's your brother, Mr. Henderson. Should I send him up?" I hesitated, then agreed. It was time to end this once and for all. Carlos strode into my penthouse with the same entitled attitude he'd always had. "Nice place," he said, looking around as if he was conducting a home inspection. "Sophia still wants to paint the bedroom blue. Why are you here, Carlos?" I asked, remaining standing, making it clear this wasn't a social visit. "I'm here to negotiate," he said, helping himself to a seat on my sofa. "Mom and Dad are in financial trouble. Serious trouble. They could lose their house. I'm aware. So here's the deal. You let us live here for 2 years, rent-free. Just 2 years. Then we'll buy our own place." I stared at him in disbelief. "That's your negotiation? You want to live in my home? For free? For 2 years? It's not like you can't afford another place," he said with a shrug. "Besides, you owe us." "Owe you? For what exactly?" "For everything." Carlos exploded, his cool facade cracking. "Mom and Dad gave you everything. Private tutoring, college prep courses, the good car in high school. You always had it easier. The delusion was staggering. Carlos, I worked 2 jobs to put myself through college, while you partied through 3 schools on mom and dad's dime. I started at the bottom of my company and worked 80-hour weeks for years, while you jumped from one failed venture to another with their financial backing. In what universe did I have it easier? You were always their favorite, he insisted, his face flushing with anger. The smart one, the responsible one, the one with potential. Do you have any idea what it's like living in your shadow? My shadow? I laughed incredulously. They have spent my entire life comparing me unfavorably to you. You're the one they sacrificed everything for, including their financial security and apparently their relationship with me. Carlos stood up, pacing now. So, you're just going to let them lose their house? After all they've done for you? I offered them financial counseling, I said. I offered to help them create a budget and debt repayment plan. They refused. They want a bailout, not a solution. You selfish bastard. Carlos snarled. You've always been selfish. This family has done everything for you. And the one time we ask for something in return, you turn your back on us. In that moment, I saw with perfect clarity what had been happening my entire life. No matter what I did, no matter how much I gave, it would never be enough. The goalposts would always move. The expectations would always increase. This pattern would continue indefinitely, unless I stopped it. I think you should leave, I said quietly. Not until you agree to help, he insisted. That wasn't a request. I walked to the door and held it open. I'm done, Carlos. Done giving, done explaining, done apologizing for having boundaries. If you contact me again, it will be through my attorney. He stormed out, hurling curses and threats. As the elevator doors closed on his furious face, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The confrontation I had dreaded had come and gone, and I was still standing. That evening, I signed the paperwork for the restraining order against my parents and Carlos. It wasn't vindictive. It was protective. I needed legal boundaries since they had proven themselves incapable of respecting personal ones. The healing process had begun in earnest. 1 year later, I stood on my penthouse terrace, watching the sunset over Lake Michigan. So much had changed in 12 months, both around me and within me. My real estate business had thrived, despite my family's predictions that cutting ties with them would lead to my downfall. In fact, without the constant drain of their demands and crises, I had more energy and focus than ever before. I had taken on several major commercial clients and expanded my residential portfolio significantly. Therapy had been transformative. I learned about concepts like emotional incest, golden child and scapegoat dynamics, and generational trauma. Understanding these patterns helped me see that what happened wasn't personal, even though it felt deeply so. My parents and Carlos were acting out roles in a dysfunctional system that had likely existed for generations. The restraining order had been necessary for the first 6 months. After repeated violations by my mother, who would show up at my office in tears, the court had made it very clear that further infractions would have serious consequences. Eventually, they stopped trying to contact me directly. Rebecca had been my constant support through everything. Our relationship deepened through the crisis, and 6 months ago, I had proposed. She said yes immediately. We were planning a small, intimate wedding for close friends, the polar opposite of Carlos and Sophia's extravaganza. You deserve to be cherished exactly as you are, Rebecca told me the night I proposed. Not for what you can provide, not for what you can do for others, but simply for who you are. It was a revolutionary concept, for someone who had spent their life trying to earn love through achievement and sacrifice. News about my family came through extended relatives. Carlos and Sophia had separated after just 6 months of marriage. Apparently, the reality of his gambling addiction and financial irresponsibility became impossible to ignore once they were living together. Sophia moved back in with her parents, who were reportedly considering an annulment. My parents lost their home to foreclosure. Despite my attorney reaching out to offer financial counseling services, they refused any help that came with accountability attached. They were now living in a small apartment and, according to my aunt, still blaming me for their circumstances. They don't understand why you won't just help them, my aunt told me during one of our rare phone calls. But some of us in the family do. We've seen the pattern for years. The first contact after months of silence came in the form of a letter from my mother. It acknowledged some mistakes, but still contained subtle manipulations and guilt trips. My therapist helped me see it for what it was, not a genuine apology, but an attempt to re-establish contact on their terms. I wrote back a brief, compassionate but firm response. I explained that while I wished them well, I needed to maintain my boundaries. Any future relationship would need to be built on mutual respect and recognition of past harms. The ball was in their court. They never responded. Through this journey, I've learned that family isn't just about blood. It's about who shows up for you, who respects your boundaries, who celebrates your successes without resentment or conditions. Rebecca is my family. My close friends are my family. The supportive colleagues who stood by me are my family. I've built a chosen family of people who value me for who I am, not what I can give them. The hardest lesson was learning that sometimes standing firm is the most loving choice you can make, not just for yourself, but for everyone involved. By refusing to continue the unhealthy patterns, I gave my parents and Carlos the opportunity to confront their own issues rather than using me as a band-aid solution. Whether they take that opportunity is their choice. I don't know what the future holds for my relationship with my biological family. Perhaps someday there will be genuine reconciliation based on mutual respect and healthy boundaries. Perhaps not. What I do know is that I am no longer willing to sacrifice my self-worth, my financial security, or my mental health to maintain toxic connections. The freedom I've found by breaking these unhealthy cycles has been worth every painful moment of the journey. Standing in my penthouse, the home I earned through years of hard work, I feel a sense of peace that once seemed impossible, not because of the material possession itself, but because of what it represents. My right to the fruits of my labor, my right to set boundaries, my right to be respected. If you've ever struggled with toxic family dynamics or had to make the difficult choice to establish boundaries with loved ones, remember that you aren't alone. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to stand firm in your truth, even when it's painful. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to prioritize their own well-being. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you strength and healing on yours.